I think one thing I definitely learned, or a couple of things, but like my big thing is like boundaries, and I'm definitely still learning this, and having juggling like a full-time position and then kind of like a side job, and then also like sometimes freelancing. I think you definitely need to set boundaries with like everyone. You don't really have obviously as much flexibility with a full-time position, but you still do. You have some leverage, and you should know that you do. Because I feel like going into like the work world, I didn't realize that obviously your employer like needs you. But then also just being really like communicative with like if you have freelance clients, like when your hours are and things. I always tell people like I might email you really late at night just because that's when I'm working. Like, is that okay? Do you have time that you like don't want to receive an email or something? So boundaries is a huge thing.
And welcome back to Have a Map. I don't even know what episode we are on. We have been rolling with these episodes, so excited for this episode. Have a friend on here who has actually really helped us a lot with our internship program and helping the next generation of creatives really find their voice and find confidence. So super thankful for having her on. But before we get to that person, I want to introduce one of our shining interns for this quarter, or I don't even know, quarter, semester, whatever it might be. And she's a fellow Minnesotan, so Minnesota is always great, and we rarely get interns from Minnesota, so happy. But Elisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Elisa. Yes, I'm from Minnesota. I'm from St. Paul. I currently live in Chicago. I go to Loyola University. I'm a senior there currently. I'm studying graphic design. We call it, our major that we call it is like visual communications, but it's pretty much graphic design. I also have a minor in Italian, and I have a minor in women's studies and gender studies. And I have a huge passion for art and design, and I'm really excited to get that career path going.
Beautiful. And we were just talking about the Italian in there.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Very.
It's fun.
Love that. And introducing our special guest, we have Kailey Roth here. Kailey, say what's up to the people. Give us a brief intro about yourself.
Hey everyone. So like you said, my name is Kailey Roth. Thank you for that introduction. I'm a graphic designer. I currently work at CB2 on the email marketing team, but I also I am the director of design at Off Kilter Media, and those are my two kind of wheelhouses.
Love that. And so happy to have you on. Kailey has helped us tremendously with like our mentor program. She's always down to come and chat with the interns. I think she's chatted with I think you've almost chatted with all the interns this year already. I think it's been like 3 in a row, honestly. It's really cool. So I don't think we've ever had anybody on there. So like if we have a banner, Kailey's on our banner for just coming through all the time. So we appreciate it. Truly appreciate it. But I'll kick it off to Elisa to kind of get the questions started.
Yeah, so Kailey, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you do at CB2 and what you do for Off Kilter.
Yeah, totally. So I've been at CB2 just for like a little bit over a year. So it's kind of a new career or a new job for me. I work on the email marketing team, like I said. I'm pretty much I'm not the sole designer of all of the emails, the like bulk promo and editorial emails that we send out, but I split that with my manager as well, that role. But I do a lot of it, as well as just like helping with any additional projects that come through. Our team at CB2, if you can imagine, it's still very small. It seems like we're a very large company just because we're housed under Crate and Barrel, but we are a small team. And so we kind of have to be flexible with our role and be open to taking on additional projects, which are always fun. As far as Off Kilter, I am the director of design. So I work on all of the design pieces, from the magazine to any promotional things to any Instagram graphics, anything like that. I also will like just help approve creative things, creative direction and whatnot through that.
Cool, awesome.
And very cool. And can you tell us a little bit about like what goes into email marketing, right? Because people think, oh, email marketing, I get an email every single week, right? But like, what does that mean from like a design standpoint? Because I don't think a lot of graphic designers would think like, oh, I can do email marketing designing, right? Like nobody maybe has thought of that as a career. So maybe you can enlighten us a little bit on like what that looks like.
Yeah, totally. So it's like obviously a fully digital design position. It's a lot of Photoshop just from like the basic logistics. But other than that, a lot of like the marketing element of like testing, and we end up doing a lot of testing to see what our consumer is like reacting to. And that also plays into design, into copy that we write, subject lines. There's a lot that goes into email design. And honestly, I had really no experience going into this for email design. I just knew pretty much like layout design, which is what in school, I like focused in publication design. So that's what they were really after, is that like editorial feel to our emails. So it kind of meshed really well. But like I said, I didn't really go in with much experience. I knew how to use Photoshop and I knew like basics and just kind of went from there. And so thankful for like my team to help me like acclimate me to like that whole scene, especially in marketing and things like that. It was a really nice way to like kind of go into marketing, just because I had like a very, very like small knowledge of that. And I'm still growing, and I think it's always changing as well. So that's helpful kind of, because we're all kind of learning together as well. But yeah, it's definitely a career path. I think a lot of our sales are driven through email marketing, especially during this current time where people aren't necessarily going to stores. Stores might not be open, things like that. So people are online shopping a lot more and checking their email, having that time to check their email a lot more. So it's definitely like a necessity, I think, within like a company. And like CB2 happened to just bring in house. A lot of design agencies will do email marketing for other companies, but CB2 happened to bring it in-house.
Can you tell us a little bit about like what off kilter is for some of those who don't know what off kilter is? Because the design work with off kilter is phenomenal, and I always love it. So
well, thank you so much. So Off Kilter media in general, we have a lot of different kind of avenues, but Off Kilter magazine specifically is really geared towards contemporary art and inclusiveness. So we try to we just are very inclusive with the artists we feature. It can range from like, if you're a painter to a chef, like there's so many different areas. And then we also have Kaiser Quarterly, which houses the journal, which is more of a lifestyle kind of vibe that we have. So it's a little bit more approachable than Off Kilter.
From a design standpoint, right? Those two brands are completely different, right? So like for you, how do you kind of go through the day-to-day process of like working with these brands, right? You got Off Kilter, you got Kaiser, and then you have CB2. So how do you kind of like mentally and creatively work through all of that?
I think I don't even realize I do that now, which is so funny. But I think in the very beginning, when you like graduate school, you have to have that kind of flexibility. And I definitely went through that learning process where like all of the styles aren't going to match what your personal style is, because as a designer, you like usually have a personal style. So you kind of start to like move outside of that and explore other styles and things like that. And so just keeping an open mind to different styles, different things like that is super helpful, I think. And then you kind of just, like I said, I don't even realize that I jump from like style to style. And I also think they all influence each other as well. You know, like you get inspiration from anything. So I think it's actually becomes like a beneficial thing.
Can I ask, how did you like get started? Like what kind of career path like have you taken that's like gotten to you where you are now?
So I originally, when I graduated school, I took a position in what was called educational publishing. So essentially I was working on textbooks and things like that. So it was like really deep in layout design. And honestly, it was like kind of the first job. It was my first job out of college, but it was like kind of just like fell into it, which I was super lucky to do. And it started from an internship and went into a full-time position I was there for, I think, 4 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
it was, yeah, which is an extremely long time to be at a position. But I did a lot of learning and had a lot of like, you know, epiphanies and like learning moments. And I think from that position, I definitely learned what I didn't want to do to get me to what I wanted to do, or in the direction of what that could be. And just moving into CB2 is there's a lot more flexibility of like what like you want to do, or you can figure that out. And just like a lot of areas to learn in, and they're open to that. They're really into like teaching and things like that. So it's great. It's such a good like environment to do that as well.
Totally.
How did you kind of like from that starting point, right? Did you always know you wanted to go into design since like after high school, or what did that look like for you?
So yeah, going from like, I think up until like my junior year of high school, I wanted to be like go into medical and be a doctor or something like that. And then kind of just had, I took a class in high school that was graphic design because we had to take like an art class, and I really liked it. And the teacher was like, oh, you should like come back next year and take it again. And like, he was very influential on like me going into design. And I look back now and I'm kind of like, I've always had that kind of design eye. I think there's like things that I can remember. I'm very like neat and orderly as well, which I think leads to that as another thing. But yeah, from high school, I decided it was like a last minute decision that I wanted to do design. And it's funny because I was going to go to Loyola and go to,
Really?
yeah, I was like looking at that as like, I could do I think it's like pre-med and then do like a minor in visual communications. And I remember my parents, why don't you just do visual communications? Like, why do you need that? So, I am familiar with that, but yeah, I'm like so happy I went into this field more than medical doctor things.
I know. Me and you have that similarity, right? Like I thought I was gonna go to school and be a doctor, and I slowly realized that like that was not it for me. I'm not built like that. Elisa, how did you get started into graphic design as well?
I kind of, I guess, decided in high school. It's funny because I, like, for a long period of my life, like I'd say like from middle school up until like my junior year of high school, I was very passionate about culinary arts, and I actually really, really wanted to go to culinary school. And then kind of like taking that path, I like was like looking at culinary schools, and I was looking at like art schools and stuff like that. And I think I just came to a point where I was like, the real part that I really liked about culinary art was like the art aspect and like the design aspect. So, you know, like the presentation and like how you set up the plates and everything, or like cake decorating and stuff like that. And so I was like, what if I just did design and like went into graphic design? And I kind of like talked through it like with my dad and stuff, because he studied graphic design in college as well. And yeah, I kind of just went with it. And then I found Loyola and I fell in love with Loyola, and I was like, this is what I'm doing graphic design. And I've loved it ever since. I mean, I don't regret anything, and I feel like this is totally the like right path for me. So
that's an awesome path that you took though.
Yeah.
That's very unique. I feel like, yeah, with like culinary school, that's interesting. But I understand that design, because like even in like very high end food, there's a lot of like color and like structure, the way that things are plated and whatnot. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, totally.
So as graphic designers, right, what have been some of your favorite projects that you've worked on, Kailey?
Oh, there's definitely been a lot of them. I think more recently, that off the top of my head, and it's more leaning into like, I'm going a little bit into like art direction and things like that. There's been some art direction projects at my at CB2 that I've helped out on and just had like the opportunity to be around, which have been really awesome. More into like freelance things. That's how I got started off Kilter. So that's definitely a highlight, I think. I also did the first print issue of Circus magazine, which was really fun. I think that's a huge highlight. I love how I think it's still very relevant, that issue today, and is still like just like a highlight in my book.
Very cool. And for some of those who are listening, right, what does art direction mean, right? Because I feel like, to me, I'm an outsider, and you and Elisa have an understanding, right? I'm an outsider, and I'm like, art direction sounds very vague. Like, I don't know what we're doing in that. So, like, what is art direction? What does all of this really mean?
Well, Elise, you're more than welcome to jump in if I miss anything, because I feel
Sure.
like I'm still learning what it means as well. Like,
yeah, no, me too.
like, there was definitely an art direction like degree at Columbia, but I never understood what it was, and I'm not sure anyone. I was like, I'm not sure if anyone really does, because they weren't really designers. But I think from what I've just like my experience is really just like creating concepts and just kind of facilitating how those concepts come to life. And I feel like that's a very general kind of idea, but it goes a lot deeper into just like, it's kind of like also directing when you're like on a photo shoot too. Kind of like the director, if you think of it, I was trying to compare it to like maybe like a director of like a film or something like that kind of.
Yeah, totally.
Just trying to like make sense of it in my head, because again, like I'm still trying to like figure that out. I think sometimes it's always so vague.
No.
Yeah. It's kind of just like that design process, like taking an idea or a concept and then bringing it to life and putting it together, taking all the pieces, putting it together like a puzzle, Yeah, I totally see like the analogy of like directing a film. It's kind of the same.
Yeah.
I get that. And I'm happy you all put it that way, because we're working on like a video project, and that makes sense, because like the director is in charge of like, this is what I like, taking the script and saying like, this is how it should look, right? And that's a hard thing. I really give like
it is
my props to graphic designers, because I don't know how you all could just be like, oh yeah, this is how it's gonna look. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. That shit is wild.
Sometimes it's really hard, I have to say, like having that like artist block. Oh my God, I'll just be like staring at my screen and it's just like a blank white page, and I'm like, I can't, my brain's like dead.
Yes, I can totally, yeah.
So Kailey, when we're talking about day-to-day, right, in that life, pre-COVID and post-COVID, what did that look like for you? What does pre-COVID day-to-day life look like? And then now kind of transitioning, what does post-COVID look like?
Day to day for me is really like it's very like routinized, just because I'm in a 9-to-5 position. So it's like, waking up, going to the office when we were in pre-COVID, and just it's like a slew of like emails and meetings and time to work and things like that. Definitely my evenings and my weekends are reserved for like off-kilter things. And that's when and even freelance, if I happen to have like a freelance job going on or something. But that's really like the 9-to-5 is really like the main bulk of my day and my weeks too.
Within that, right, that 9-to-5 structure, how much time probably do you spend like designing just like in a zone versus like meetings, would you say?
I think thankfully like at CB2, they're pretty broken out into like Wednesdays are our heavy meeting days, and pretty much everyone we might have like meetings all day, but that's like the known meeting day. And then Mondays and Tuesdays are really like my work days. So I could have pretty much a lot of the time I have all of Tuesday just to like work. And then Monday might be a little bit packed with meetings, but that's about it. And then the rest of the week as well. Thursdays, we usually leave Fridays off for meetings. So if you have anything to like wrap up and things like that, or prepare for the next week, there's always time for that. But then also Thursdays, we have like some morning meetings. So it's kind of a lot of work time, which is nice. But it's a good balance, I think.
What kind of things do you do like for self-care, like outside of work and stuff, like, relaxing, taking your mind off things, not thinking about design for a while?
Yeah, definitely. So I think just like during COVID, a walk has been really nice. Just going on a walk, I feel like I've gone on the same route probably the last like 5 walks I've taken, just out of like habit. But it like kind of just like empties my brain a little bit, so I make more space. and just kind of like, so I don't like end up going to sleep with like workday things in my brain still, I think. That's really self-care thing that I've been focusing on doing. I also cook a lot, obviously during COVID as well, but I try to cook during the like at least the weekdays at night. So that's also kind of my like self-care thing. And then I feel like I also have like, you know, your basic self-care things too, like, I don't know, doing a face mask or I don't know, drinking wine or something.
Yeah.
Obviously that's self-care thing, but I feel like the basics too. I feel like never like, I mean, they might sound cliche, but always they are for a reason.
They totally work.
Cooking is so therapeutic, like, and it's like for me, I think of cooking as like super creative. So I just like to like go into my fridge and be like, all right, this is what I have. This is what I know this tastes like. And then I can mix it up and just like play around with it. Like I never use a recipe book. Like I'll look at a recipe and be like, all right, those two things make like a slaw or something. And then I was like, cool, I'm just gonna make a slaw out of this. Like, what's one of your favorite things to cook?
Ooh, I feel like I have gotten really into making salmon.
Ooh.
Just I've really gotten into like trying to pan fry salmon, which I usually will bake it. So I'm trying up something new. And also just like sauteing. Now I'm starting to think of everything I've been cooking, but like sauteing things too, because I feel like I have time to saute and I actually can think about it. Where I'm like, oh, I should do that in the morning, and then I can like bake it or cook it at night. But then also like salads. I feel like making a really good salad with like multiple different like things in it is like can be difficult, but like it's actually really not. And salad dressing as well. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, that's real. That's real. Elisa, do you cook a lot too?
I do sometimes. My roommate does most of the cooking in our apartment. She's a honestly very good chef. She makes really good food. But I have a staple of making carbonara by scratch. I've like ever since I studied abroad in Italy, I just like could not get away from it, and I like learned it from one of my old roommates how to make it, and I literally probably eat it like once a week. I make it all the time. It's so good.
Y'all did put me onto carbonara. I had no idea what it was, Kaylee. And then like 4 other interns jumped in there and was like, yeah, I make it all the time too. I was like,
it's so good. It's so good.
I don't think I've ever made it, but I've definitely had it. It's so good.
Where do you get I gotta look this up because I've never had this, and I love Italian food, but like
it's actually honestly it's really easy. I mean, like I can probably do it in about like 20-30 minutes now, but like it's actually really simple. Like it's barely any ingredients. Like you're basically just using eggs and cheese and pasta and bacon or pancetta. I use bacon because who can afford pancetta? Not me.
So Kaylee, when kind of reflecting on some of the work that you've done, what would you say is your impact on the world, right? Like, what are you really trying to do with your art and your design? Like, how do you consistently impact the world?
I think a lot of it shines through Off Kilter. I think inclusivity is like a huge thing, and just making sure I think that like just like anyone who is interested in art or things like that, and making it also approachable as well. So I think inclusivity and approachability is a huge thing, because I think art can be sometimes really unapproachable and things like that, or kind of intimidating, maybe not unapproachable, but intimidating. And I think that making it just like more accessible and things like that is really awesome.
What kind of advice could you give to me and other fellow graphic designers of tomorrow working in the world?
Yeah, I think one thing I definitely learned, or a couple of things, but like my big thing is like boundaries, and I'm definitely still learning this, and having juggling like a full-time position and then kind of like a side job, and then also like sometimes freelancing. I think you definitely need to set boundaries with like everyone. You don't really have obviously as much flexibility with a full-time position, but you still do. You have some leverage, and you should know that you do. Because I feel like going into like the work world, I didn't realize that obviously your employer like needs you. but then also just being really like communicative with like, if you have freelance clients, like when your hours are and things. I always tell people like, I might email you really late at night just because that's when I'm working. Like, is that okay? Do you have time that you like don't want to like receive an email or something? So boundaries is a huge thing. And then also I feel like marketing, graphic design, just the industry is so fast moving, but you technically don't have to move that fast. So I think that can be applied to different areas too, of like how fast you design something, or if you're taking your time to like, I definitely always spell check everything, but even just like the little things like that, but you never need to really like move that quickly. If that makes sense.
That's really good advice. I get so caught up in that about like deadlines and due dates and stuff. And I just like, that's what stresses me out the most, I think, about designing stuff, is that like, obviously like art is a process, and like, it just doesn't come to you right away. And sometimes you can't really totally do it in an exact timely manner. And I feel like that's good to just like remind yourself that like, it does take time. It's a process. It's a design process. Don't speed it. Don't rush it.
Exactly. And I think, I mean, I can't speak for all clients that I've had, but for most clients, if I'm running late on a deadline or something like that, just giving them a heads up. I've never run into like a real issue, other than the fact that like, if I've known there's a hard stop, then I'm aware of it. But like, if we have a little bit of leniency, then it's kind of like, just like communicating is a huge thing as well, through anything.
For sure.
No, communication is so key. And I've learned that the easy way and the hard way so many times. Like, I feel like you get scared to be like, hey, I don't think I can get this done. But like, the more you communicate with the person, then you can understand like, all right, what is your real hard deadline, right? And now you all are on like a good playing field to understand one another. So I think that's always fascinating.
Totally. Yeah. And like, I feel like I definitely have like been like scared to talk to like, or to like communicate something like that. It's definitely hard to say, but it just needs to be said. And it's like, okay, if we're going to get this project done, I need to tell you this. So you kind of have to put that aside of like your kind of like fears and emotions.
Before we wrap up, we always like to do a fun question. I love music. I think everybody loves music. I don't think we found anyone on the podcast yet that hates music. But Kailey, and this is actually a question for Kailey and Elisa, but Kailey, first, what would you say is maybe something that is like nonstop on one of your playlists, or something that you're constantly listening? Maybe it's like an artist, or maybe it's a few artists that you're constantly listening to. What is that for you?
Recently I've been listening to the new album from Fleet Foxes, just like working wise. It's very chill, but still has like, it's not too calm. So it's like still kind of, doesn't keep you asleep. But what else? I've been really into podcasts too. I listen to a podcast on my walk. And sometimes maybe I'm not always listening to it, but it's like nice to hear someone else's voice other than my own in my head. So I've been listening to Hidden Brain, which has been really interesting, just kind of like learning random things. So
Elisa, what about you?
Honestly, my music taste changes like all the time. Mainly just because like I associate music with moods, as I'm sure like most people do. So like, if you're in like kind of like a relaxed mood and you want to get like work done and stuff like that, like I'll usually listen to like indie music or like stuff like Fleetwood Foxes. What am I saying? I almost said Fleetwood Mac. Fleet Foxes. Fleetwood Mac is also really, really good. I just listened to that yesterday. But then it's like, sometimes I'll be more in an upbeat mood, or like, I feel like there's like a specific to like driving music. I don't really drive that much, but it's the same as like, if I'm like riding my bike or like, I'm like transporting somewhere, like there's like music, like to those moods. Like I listen to a lot of like Mac Miller, and just kind of like chill, like rap music like that. So.
I love that. Driving music is the key. Driving and biking music. I didn't know biking music was so liberating. I was like, I felt like I was flying.
It's so much better biking. It's so much more fun.
God, that's so true. That's so true. Yeah, for me, I've been listening to like, what would I call it? Like modern classical music. This guy named Peter Sandberg, and he's out of, I think he's Swedish, but he does like a lot of scoring, and that music just gets me in the right like headspace to really work and execute and be able to like read things. But yeah, his stuff is really good. He has this one like album called like Scandinavian Nights, I think, and it's just like jazzy, bluesy. It's beautiful. It's just music to my ears. But Kailey, we want to thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. You crushed it. And I think a lot of the information you shared with us was so needed, right? Because I think for a lot of students that we come in contact with, we always learn and figure out like, all right, I want to go into these careers, but I don't know like what they're called, right? So like, it's very hard, I feel like, to go through these careers and not know exactly like what positions are open for a graphic designer. And you shed a lot of light on that, and we truly appreciate that. And one thing we like to do at our internship is just give everyone a round of applause. That's our thing. That's how we do it. So thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Kailey.
I was gonna say I'm very honored to be on this. It's so awesome just to like, I don't know, speak about my past and things like that, and hopefully give tidbits of information that help the future.
Yeah, and it really does help the next generation of creatives. And I think for us, this is just a tool and a resource that they can listen to now, and then they can come back to as they're channeling up their career path. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for Elisa being a great co-host, talking a little bit about your culinary career that I actually found out about, which is super dope.
You gotta learn how to make carbonara.
I will. That's my goal before the end of 2020. I will learn how to make carbonara.
That's a good goal.
I can do that. So I want to thank everyone for listening, whether this is your morning, your evening routine. We are out. Skr, skr.